What's good, everybody? This is CP, and today I'm going to talk about the Edmonton Oilers. I'm going to take a deep dive into what went down for Edmonton so far this offseason. This includes the biggest Oiler-related news, including major free agency signings, trades, and other significant roster moves. Man, it has definitely been an epic offseason so far. And the crazy thing is, I don't think it's completely over. Ken Holland and friends might have a few more moves up their sleeve to make it one of the biggest off-seasons in the McDavid era. On top of that, I'll also predict how things might pan out roster-wise, including potential trade candidates and how the Oilers lineup might look like when the puck drops for the 2022-23 NHL season. For those unaware, the off-season really started for the Oilers when Duncan Keith announced his retirement. First off, congrats to Keith on an amazing NHL career. In my opinion, he is one of the best defensemen of his generation and should be a walk-in Hall of Famer very soon. On the other hand, this was huge news for the Oilers, especially when we consider the salary cap situation. In short, Keith's retirement was good news for the Oilers, but not so good news for the Chicago Blackhawks. In the end, the Blackhawks were hit with a cap recapture penalty, costing them about $5.5 million next season. Meanwhile, Keith's $5.54 cap hit will be removed from the Oilers' books, giving them more wiggle room to enter free agency. Moving on, another huge move for the Oilers was trading longtime forward Zack Kassian to the Arizona Coyotes. To be honest, I kinda saw this one coming, as Kassian's play has been on a downtrend for the past few years, and salary-wise, it made the most sense for him to be one of the first ones to go. And yes, the situation wasn't ideal, as Holland had to pay a few assets to offload his contract, and who knows, this could hurt the Oilers in a few years. But the key thing to point out here was that the Coyotes took all of Kassian's $3.2 million cap hit for the next 2 seasons, which is huge in my opinion, as paying Kassian $3.2 million to play 4th line minutes for the next few seasons would have made things a lot more difficult for Holland to upgrade his roster. As crazy as this sounds, things didn't quiet down in Oil Country, as it was reported that it was highly likely Edmonton Oilers goaltender Mike Smith spends the next season on LTIR. This was huge news because we already knew that Mikko Koskinen would not be returning next year. Add that to Mike Smith being on LTIR. Essentially, if you did the math, this meant the Oilers would likely have 2 new goalies heading into next season. And with Holland not expecting Mike Smith to play, the Oilers will likely place him on long-term injury reserve at the beginning of next season. As a result, they will receive a bonus to compensate for his $2.2 million cap hit. So with all that in mind, Edmonton headed into free agency with much more money to spend than they anticipated. Now moving on to free agency, this was another area where things went a little bit crazy. In fact, I think this might be the biggest offseason Edmonton had in a minute, in particular with signings and landing all the free agent targets they wanted. Anyways, the first major signing for Ken Holland was bringing back Evander Kane. He signed him to a 4-year contract worth $5.125 million per season, and this was pretty massive in my opinion. Like many Oiler fans, I wasn't sure if Uncle Kenny could bring back Evander at all. So when I first saw the news, I was actually quite surprised to see him pull it off. Overall, I loved the term and the price point. 4 years is perfect in my opinion. It isn't too long and is perfect for what the Oilers are trying to build right now. Secondly, the price point is another huge dub for the Oilers. As I see it, Kane is probably at least a $6 million player on the open market, maybe even closer to $7 or $7.5 million on a good day. So for the Oilers to be able to lock him up at close to $5 million, I think they're getting great value for that. Actually, I think they might be getting amazing value, because in a perfect world, if Kane continues to perform like he did late last year, I could see him easily get over 30 goals and possibly even be a 40-goal player. Granted that he gets to ride shotgun with McDavid or Draisaitl next year. Besides all that, I also think he is the perfect winger for McDavid. Basically something they have been trying to find for a minute. And don't roast me on this one, but in some ways I see Evander Kane as the perfect hybrid of Milan Lucic and Taylor Hall. Yes, get this, in that he is faster and has more skill and finishing ability than Milan Lucic. On the other hand, he is more physical than Hall and does not need the puck or to be the line driver to be effective alongside McDavid. So to me, that's the perfect winger for McDavid. Anyways, if I had to grade this signing, I would probably give Ken Holland an A+ for now. What do you think about the Evander Kane signing? Comment below. Next up, another big boy move by Ken Holland this summer was landing one of the biggest free agent goalies available in Jack Campbell. He penned Campbell to a 5-year deal worth $25 million with a $5 million AAV. To keep it real, I was getting a bit worried for the Oilers early on in the offseason. As we all know, they needed a new goalie starting next year, but the goaltending market was actually drying up pretty fast right before free agency. Nonetheless, the Oilers got their guy, and we will see how this one plays out. Some may argue that the $5 million for 5 years is too risky, but personally I don't hate it, and I think it's a good gamble to take, especially considering where the Oilers are at right now. Campbell is still not that old at 30 years old, and despite being a bit of a late bloomer, his career has been trending up each year since 2018, so that's definitely a good sign in my books. He's also coming off a solid season where we saw him go 31-9 with a .914 save percentage. So to be completely honest, I'm not so sure why there's so much hate about this signing. Also, from what I saw in the playoffs, I thought Campbell was just as good as Vasilevsky was when the Leafs played the Lightning in the first round, and Campbell was literally 1 or 2 shots away from making it to the second round. So if Jack Campbell can be that same guy in Edmonton, I would say that he's actually an upgrade from what the Oilers had last year in Smith and Koskinen. Another reason why I think the Campbell signing was necessary is that the Oilers were already a 3rd round team with a 40-year-old Mike Smith between the pipes. So if they went into this season without a legit starting goalie, it would probably be considered a huge step backwards, aka another wasted prime year of McDavid and Draisaitl. Without a doubt, I would say that the Oilers needed to make a signing like this if they wanted to build on last season. Therefore, if I had to give this signing a grade, I would probably give it a B for now, and we'll have to wait and see how Campbell plays out his contract to see if he was worth the bag. Brett Kulak was another major signing for Ken Holland. The Oilers were able to bring him back on a 4-year deal with a $2.75 million AAV. And overall, I think it was a pretty solid move to re-sign Kulak. Kulak is a stable, smooth skating defender who gets the job done and can give you a solid 16 to 17 minutes a night. And at 28 years old, he should have at least 2 to 3 years of very good hockey left, which in my opinion works perfectly for the term of this particular deal. To me, he's a perfect number 5 guy on a great team with number 4 and second pairing upside, especially if you ice him with the right partner. At the end of the day, I think it's always best to have as many NHL defensemen in your lineup as possible, because you honestly don't know when injuries might hit you. So if we look at the Oilers blue line right now, I don't think Holland is completely done, and I feel like if he can find the right deal, he might bring in another legit top 4 defender. As a result, Kulak can move down the lineup, making him a very high-end bottom pairing guy. So if you were to ask me, I would give the Kulak signing a B+ right now. How about you? How do you feel about the Kulak deal? Do you think Holland made the right move, or should he have spent the money elsewhere? Comment below. Holland also retooled his offensive depth by bringing in Mattias Janmark on a 1-year deal worth $1.25 million. Janmark is an experienced forward who had a couple of great seasons for the Dallas Stars early on in his career, including a career high of 19 goals and 34 points. And overall, from what I saw, he's a pretty good skater with some offensive skills and was once considered a rather reliable defensive forward in the league. And despite coming off a few very mediocre seasons, I feel like Edmonton might be a place where he is able to reboot his NHL career. So at $1.25 million, I have time for Janmark, as he's not that old at only 29 and seems to be a consistent 25-point player in a 3rd or 4th line role. The way I see it is that this is a low-risk move which adds a little bit more experience and offense to the Oilers' bottom 6. It's also only a 1-year deal, so if things do go south, it's not the end of the world. With that said, I would grade this signing an A-. The Oilers were also able to avoid arbitration with Puljujärvi and resign him to a 1-year deal at $3 million. You probably have read the rumors and know that he's currently one of the Oilers' main trade candidates. And I'm sure Holland has been grinding it out trying to find a good return for Jesse all summer, but obviously no luck so far. So at $3 million, I don't think this is a horrible deal, especially if the Oilers can't trade him and Jesse does come back and can give the Oilers around 15 to 20 goals and maybe 35 to 40 points, then I would argue that is actually pretty fair value at $3 million. But if we look at things long term, I honestly think that the writing is likely on the wall and both sides are probably ready to move on. The Oilers also have a few younger players like Xavier Bourgault and Dylan Holloway who might be able to come in and take Jesse's place for a much lower cost sooner than most people think. So the bottom line is that I see this signing as a placeholder right now, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Puljujärvi be traded anytime this offseason or sometime early next season. In terms of other restricted free agents, the Oilers still have to resign Kailer, Yamamoto, and Ryan McLeod. Who knows, maybe by the time I release this video, both players gets resigned. Ideally, it seems like the Oilers would like to keep both Yamamoto and McLeod over Puljujärvi for the next few years. However, the biggest question for me is at what price point will Yamamoto come in at, and how long will the term be? Because as much as his teammates and the organization likes Yamamoto, I think they have a bottom line. And if that next contract gets over that number, I wouldn't be surprised to see the Oilers deal him to potentially address other issues on the roster. Because at the end of the day, Yamamoto is a complementary winger, and through the past several drafts, the Oilers have loaded up on wingers over the past few years. As a result, they have a few prospects very close to playing in the show. So this might be shocking to some, but if the price isn't right, then I can see Yamamoto being traded as well. Besides forward depth, defense is another area I think Ken Holland probably wants to improve on, especially if he wants to take his team to the next level and build on last year. Then that's probably the most logical thing to do. Because right now, if we look at the Oilers decor, it isn't exactly championship caliber. And ideally, I would say that it could go a long way if they could add another legit top 4 defender and possibly a more experienced bottom pairing guy. But in order to do that, the Oilers need money, and Holland will probably have to shed salary elsewhere. And from afar, it seems like the easiest place to do that is to cut some money on the wings, with players like Warren Foegele, Jesse Puljujärvi, and possibly Kailer, Yamamoto as cap casualties. Yeah, so let me know if you agree or disagree with what I said in this video. Feel free to comment below and share some of your thoughts, and I'll see everybody next time.